brain. Welcome into his frequency. Enter at your own risk. Come be at peace with me. Ask the Paul, where we rise and don't fall.
Welcome back to another episode of Baxter's Buzz. I am your host, Baxter E. Hall. Welcome to my brain. Welcome to my frequency. Enter at your own risk. Now, today I have a special guest. He is the owner and founder of Scale TX. It is an HR consulting firm. He's a friend of mine. We go back a number of years now. Brad Voorhees, welcome to Baxter's Buzz.
Thank you for having me. And yes, great friend you are, Baxter. I think it's been 4 or 5 years, and so I am
Yeah.
honored that I'm on your show on this Friday afternoon.
So no, and thank you for taking the time. I always say, it's important to have, you have these conversations with people, and most of them are not recorded, thank God. But then you have these folks that are doing really cool things that are sort of adding to you, pouring into your cup, and you're like, man, I wish that piece of this conversation, or I wish I could share this, right? And so it's nice to hit record sometimes and to say, okay, let's share some of our internal conversations with the people, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I always wanted to be a movie star, so here I am.
Well, you got a little ways to go, but this is a good start. This is a good
Okay,
start.
fair enough.
So Scale TX, talk about sort of why you initially um started the consulting firm, and then I know that at one point it was you were doing it sort of on the side in the midst of like corporate America, and then you recently made the switch. But talk about the transition. Why initially did you found the consultancy, and then also kind of what led you to where you are now?
Sure. Yeah. So I opened the firm 4 years ago. And when I say open, I mean I did the three things that I guess every business owner kind of thinks about, right? I filed with Laura, and so I got my EIN. I created a logo and I created a website. So I did all of that 4 years ago. It's now since gone through some rebranding, but I just love being able to create HR departments. So up until that time, I think I had done it 3 or 4 times for different startups in kind of my corporate career, just building the foundation of an HR department. I was working for a large organization at the time. I opened up that consultancy in late 2019, technically early 2020, and hence Scale TX was founded. And it was really just meant to be a hobby, and that's essentially what it was. And I had another full-time job at a large organization, and I was doing that on the side, and it was a lot of fun. But mainly it was just friends and kind of acquaintances that were running smaller organizations. They needed HR advice. That's what I was doing. This past summer, I left my full-time job. It was a great job. I love that job, but I wasn't in love with the job, if that makes sense, right?
Sure.
And I just thought it was a good opportunity. I was really feeling led to go into my consultancy full time, which is what I did just this past summer. So, as I speak today, it's really just only been an 8 month endeavor, not even close to being a full calendar year. So that's what I'm doing now. And I can tell you the biggest difference that I'm noticing when you go from working in corporate HR roles for 16 years or however long it was, one of the last things that you're doing is selling. When you become an entrepreneur, especially like me, a solopreneur, I'm doing this all by myself. Now, all of a sudden, yes, I'm advising on client work, but I am selling. And that has been a complete new skill set that I have had to overcome. And, you're smiling because you're a sales guy, right? Part of your job, a big part of your job is sales. I had never done that up until basically this past fall. So I am learning a lot in that sense.
Well, let me give you a little advice.
Okay.
First of all, I want to say congratulations. I know it's a huge leap to jump out on your own, and a lot of my friends over the years have made the leap. And of course, since 2020, a huge percentage of people that I know, that's when they decided to kind of to make this move, right? It was like
Yep.
most of us had a little opportunity to pause and reflect, and people wanted to do some things differently. And so to you, I would say congratulations, because it's a huge leap, to be sort of doing it as a side hustle, a passion project, to sort of doing it full time. Now, here's my advice to you, and I want to tell you the good news and the bad news. The good news is you've been in sales this whole time, right? And you're, you know, over 15 years in the HR world, working with um, your HR partners, your other internal team members, your leadership that you may have to present ideas to. You've been selling ideas, you've been selling the culture, you've been selling the mission, you've been presenting these solutions and in hopes that folks will adopt these things because you feel like it's the proper solution to kind of take the company forward or sort of resolve any sort of issues that may be sort of right in front of your face, right?
Yep. Absolutely.
So you've done it. You've been doing it. So there's no you started this thing over close to 20 years ago. So don't worry about being new. You're an old veteran by now.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I may, if this doesn't work out, I may take a crack into like a chief sales officer role or somewhere. So we'll see what happens.
Well, between movie star and chief sales officer coming from HR, I mean you're definitely not short on ambition,
That's
Brad.
right.
So
Or other options.
the sky's the limit. Yeah, yeah. So when you think about, yeah, you talked about the sort of selling component. When you're having conversations with um organizations, leaders that may need some assistance, some outside assistance, I mean, how are you presenting this, and are these organizations, do they have any HR support? Are they typically growing faster than they sort of can sort of sustain, or
Sure.
is it a mix between non-HR folks internally and some HR folks that you're partnering with, or how do these conversations typically arise?
Yep, absolutely. So my ideal client profile, the companies that I'm actively talking to on a weekly basis, Baxter, either don't have any HR at all, or if they do, it's one of two things. Maybe they are a true HR professional. So I'll say that meaning with intent of like maybe that's what they went to school for, or that's what they want to do, or that's what they have experience in. There's that, or somebody else in the organization is doing HR, like an office manager, an executive assistant, or something like that. That's everybody's favorite first HR manager, right? Is their office manager.
For sure.
And so a lot of small companies do this. So I am talking to organizations like that because in the area where they actually may have somebody, I'll bring up HR specialist or HR generalist, right? Roles that we would consider be like entry level HR jobs. They may excel at the tactical stuff of HR, but you ask them to develop a performance management strategy. Let's say you're a 75-person company, they are going to struggle with that, right? And the owner or CEO, which is most likely the person that this individual is reporting to, they won't be able to give the guidance or the expertise to that person. So that's the kind of typical client. How I go into these situations, trust me, when I call them, when I first talk to them, and my two best friends are engineers, so like all they think I do this entire time they've known me is that I hire and fire people and I process payroll. Like that is what HR does to so many people. And guess what? I start talking to CEOs, and one of the first couple of questions they ask is, "Are you a headhunter? Right? Are
Mm,
you a third party recruiter? We have somebody that processes payroll." Like that's all they want to talk about, and that's all they think that I do. So when I'm talking to businesses, Baxter, a lot of it is uncovering, which is the fun part. So, Mr. or Mrs. Business Owner, what do you do for performance management? Uh, okay, so Mr. Business, what do you do for employee engagement? Right? And so I get them to start thinking, uncovering problems. Now I associate a cost to that because this stuff has to be done. but it's being done usually by a lot of people that don't have the time, don't have the resources or the expertise in doing it. Therefore, it's costing them money.
We were talking a bit about this before we started recording. Sometimes, many times, organizations don't know what they don't know, right?
Yeah.
And you mentioned as an example, like 75 employees, right? They started out by themselves. They brought on a couple of people. They got a couple of big accounts. They started growing like crazy, and they're like, "Oh my goodness, I don't even know where to begin," right? And
Right.
so the HR functions were minimal at one point, but now we're talking about performance management. We're talking about engagement. We're talking about are we, from a uh, compensation standpoint, are we competitive? You
Right.
know,
Yep.
can we keep the talent that we have, and can we recruit new talent? And are
Right.
these folks? It's not just the benefits. It's the engagement piece. It's all considered benefits, whether you look at it that way or not, right? How the programs that you may have placed internally, how closely do people feel aligned to the company's mission, and sort of clear next steps for promotions and that sort of thing. I mean, folks want to know all of that, and as a CEO who's just head down, who's been like working their tails off. Yeah, they're not looking at though they're looking how to scale the business, right?
Right. That's exactly it. And this is, by the way, this is a common thread of all small to medium sized businesses, right? So it's like I hear the exact same story. I know it, because even again, I've created multiple HR departments, but I've never been in any of these companies that I've done it on the corporate side. I've never been employee, within top 10 employees, right?
Mm.
Because organizations generally do not bring on somebody full time in HR until employee 20, 30, 40, kind of that range, right? So everybody that started a business and that has grown it, they are all facing the same exact challenges when it comes to talent.
Yeah, yeah. And so when you think about sort of the skill set that you bring to the table, the perspective, sort of what I like to call it like your fastball, like what you do well, like when you talk about an ideal client or sort of an ideal um, issue that you can help
Yeah.
um, resolve. Like, what is that?
I love to package. My nickname is the bundler. I just like to just bring it all together when it comes to a talent experience. I was joking about the nickname. Nobody calls me
No, you're
that, by the
not.
way.
No, you're not. I'm
I
writing
know.
that down.
That's right. The next time you see me, everybody, this is the bundler. Look, again, I talk to an organization and they say, we have a problem here. We have a problem here. They have too many problems to fix at once. What I specialize in is taking all of those functions of HR and creating a talent experience around it. Because when you do that, now you have an EVP, an employee value proposition, right? Where you can package this and say, this is why it's so great to work at my company XYZ. It's not just about pay and total rewards slash benefits, right? It is the entire thing. It is the employee value proposition. If your reputation is this, why do people choose to work at your organization compared to your competitor, for example? So this is what I specialize in, is how the engagement piece does tie to the performance piece, does tie to the training and development piece, does tie to the onboarding, the talent acquisition, the total rewards, the HR tech, all of it. I tie it all together as a talent experience. That's my fastball.
I like it. I like it. Um, when you, I had a couple of different thoughts, and it's all, and everyone needs to make sure that they're conveying their story, right? As a consultant, when I'm, talking to a potential new client, we're telling our story. I'm telling my story as Baxter, right? I'm telling Kapnick's story. That is woven into the value proposition, because no one's necessarily going to care about what I can offer unless they kind of care about me and invested in me. And that story from an employee and that value proposition, that EVP that you mentioned, that is the thing that allows team members to sort of get behind an org, and if they feel connected enough to it, 50 cents here, $1 here per hour is not going to make them jump ship, right? It's a deeper mission
Right.
than that.
Right. Absolutely. And in organizations that have just a mission based, um, backing in general, have a head start in this. So what I mean by that is like a nonprofit or a support center, because a lot of times these organizations just simply can't pay at the top of the market, but they still get people to come work for them because it's a mission-based organization that person deeply cares about,
That's right.
right?
That's right.
So like you would imagine at an animal shelter, for example, you're not going to get people who don't have love for pets and animals to come work for you, for as one example, right? And so
That's right.
like how do you highlight that and tie it to everything else?
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes you need someone to have their head up and see these different pieces in order to bundle that
Exactly.
all together, because that creates the best, most authentic, most sort of like 360-degree story that you can talk to stakeholders, potential new team members, but then also the communities and the clients and customers that they're serving, right?
Absolutely. That's absolutely what I do, because like you mentioned earlier, the CEO, president, the executive management team, they are heads down into something else. Nobody is looking up and saying, "Hey, let's cut the brakes here," right? Slam on the brakes. What is our talent strategy? And they don't have it. That is what I advise and assist on.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I imagine that you may make another return or two to Baxter's Buzz, but today was been great. Thank you. These are the conversations where they're not in the weeds. It's still high level, and it's things that folks aren't always thinking about. So I appreciate your perspective. Thank you for the time, and on behalf of Brad, the bundler, uh, he is the owner and founder of Scale TX, an HR consultancy, doing amazing work at, within his organization, outside his organization, and just, a wealth of knowledge. Brad Voorhees, thank you.
Thanks so much for having me on Baxter's Buzz. Great way to
Yeah.
spend my Friday afternoon. Let me tell
See,
you that.
yeah, you couldn't think of anything better, I'm sure. On behalf of Brad, I am Baxter E. I want everyone listening and watching to know that you are all capable. You just need to find your own frequency. And until next time, peace.
Welcome into his brain. Welcome into his frequency. Enter at your own risk. Come be at peace with me.
Thank you so much for watching this video. If you haven't already, please hit the like button. Please subscribe, share, and also hit that notification button as well. Thank you so much.
Financial literacy to authentic black history. This real rap.